Welcome to the Alignment Blueprint. I'm your host, Callie. I'm a holistic life and business strategist. I also happen to be extremely passionate about holistic healing and growth. With over 13 years of experience, I've worked with clients from all walks of life. I also know living an authentically aligned life in business and in health can be a little overwhelming. I'm here to break it down for you and take you on my journey to authentic alignment. Remember, the materials and content within this podcast are intended as general information only and are not to be considered a substitute for medical advice or treatment. Hello, welcome to the Alignment Blueprint. I am excited for this episode. I am here with Katie Glasgow. She is a friend of mine, a peer, really just all around amazing light in the world. And I'm really excited to get to talk to her today. So I am going to have her introduce herself because I love hearing from the guests and having them just kind of tell us what they're all about. So hi, Katie. How are you today?
I am so good. It's snowing out. I'm in Iowa and I'm all curled up in my little office and I've got a cup of coffee and I'm ready to dive in. So good.
It's
So good to be here today
perfect.
with you. Thank
It's so
you.
nice to have you. I will say before we get started, you can't see the video on this podcast, but she is wearing her Merry Magic shirt, and I adore it because it describes her like perfectly.
Oh, thank
Um,
you. I know it's so much fun to have like fun little Christmas things on. And every time I see anything that says magic with it, which we'll get into why I love magic so much, I just have to buy it because I love magic.
I
Because I
love
believe
it.
that we live in a world of magic and we have the ability to see and experience magic in our everyday life every single day. We have that opportunity. And what we look for is what we find in our lives. And why not look for magic?
I love it. Um, so tell me a little bit about you
Okay.
and kind of like tell me a little bit about you currently, and then we'll get into like how it all started for you.
Okay, so I am an intuitive guide and moon mentor, which we'll dive into that a little bit more. And I live in a really small town in Iowa, which kind of surprises a lot of people. But I lived all over the place. I've lived in Arizona, California, Costa Rica, and I decided to settle back in Iowa because I can stay super, super grounded here to do the work that I am here to do. And I love it for my kids. I have three boys and they are 17 and 13 and 9. And they have taught me so much on my journey and, helping me get to where I'm at today. And I just love, being here with them. And so, let me see, what do I want to say about me? They, no, let's not talk about the boys. That's not what I'm feeling.
I
I
was
need to
going to
talk
say, talk
about.
about
Okay.
you.
Yeah, let's talk about me. Okay, so I'm an intuitive guide and a moon mentor. So what does that actually mean? I get a lot of people that ask me, like, what does it mean to be an intuitive guide? And I actually had somebody ask me this question last week. And when I was in a little bit of a hesitation space to respond to that, she was like, just tell me about what you do when you work with women. Like, how do you experience it? What do you experience? What do they experience? So um, the reason I call myself an intuitive guide is because I do energy work, right? But for the longest time, I didn't connect with any type of energy modality. And there's so many of them out there. There's, Reiki, Simply Healed, cranial sacral work, acupuncture, like so many different modalities of energy work and healing techniques. And I think they're all beautiful. And I love when people learn about them and explore about them. But when I was just getting started, and starting to understand this bigger concept of energy and understanding that I could feel other people's energy. Every time I looked at any of those modalities, I was just getting that hard no, right? And I've always been a person that I operate by listening to my gut, right? A lot of times it doesn't make any sense, but I just have that like deep inner knowing that this is the path I'm supposed to take, or this is the person I'm supposed to reach out to today, or this is what we're supposed to do, in whatever area of our life that we're supposed to do it. And so I was never connecting to any of these energy modalities. And for the longest time, I felt like there was something wrong with me because I couldn't connect to like, oh, people would be like, oh, do you do Reiki? I'm like, no, I don't do Reiki. And they're like, well, what certifications do you have? What credentials do you have? And they wanted to know all of these things. And I think that is really common in this space that I've been in for quite some time, for over 12 years. And just in general, is that we're constantly seeking somebody that we think has more knowledge than us to help fix us, right? We're constantly looking outside of ourselves for the answers that are already within. And so then I had a teacher and a dear friend that started teaching me a little bit more about energy work. I still remember one day we were up on top of a mountain, like literally on top of a mountain in Montana at a retreat. And she walks up to me out of the blue. We kind of knew each other at this point, not really, just kind of. And she walks up to me and she starts like touching my head and snapping and like swirling her fingers around me. And she's like, you are an empath. You have no protection. You are letting people suck you dry. You feel like shit all the time. And I'm like, what? Like, but everything she was saying made so much sense. So I started learning from her a little bit, started kind of exploring these other techniques. And one of the things that she told me, because she has a background in Chinese medicine and acupuncture, is that a philosophy in Chinese medicine is that it is not the student who seeks the teacher, but the teacher who seeks the students, right?
Okay.
So just think about that. Like, just think about that. It's not the teacher, or it's not the student that seeks the teacher. It's the teacher that seeks the students, because the teacher wants to know, like, who's actually ready to learn what I have to share with them? Who's actually ready for me to share this wisdom with them? And I think that's why for the longest time I wasn't connecting, because it was me trying to seek something outside of myself that I really truly didn't need. Right? And so she started to teach me a little bit more about energy, not like how I needed to work with energy, but just more about energy. And she taught me not necessarily a modality, but how to tap into the wisdom that was already inside of my body. Right?
Yes.
And so last week when this coach asked me this question, I was like, I had this other friend. I love it how we get, there's usually for me, it's women, these women that kind of enter and exit our lives that teach us these like profound lessons. And at the time, we sometimes don't even understand how deep and profound they are until a couple of years later. Right. And then we're like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, like that was just, And so this friend told me to read this book series, A Discovery of Witches. And at the time, there was only 3 books to the series. Now there's like 5 or 6, but there is 3 books in the series. And she's like, you need to read this series. And if you've never read this series, you have to go find it, especially if you're into witchy things and you love, like witches and vampires, which I have been obsessed with since I was little. Have you, Callie?
Yes.
Have you obsessed with
If you
witches
see
and
me
vampires?
looking down, it's because I'm taking notes. I'm not.
Yeah, no, you're totally
I'm
fine. You're
taking
totally
notes so I
fine.
can ask questions.
So anyway,
But yes, I have.
was reading these books, and in the book there is this witch, and her name is Diana Bishop. But Diana Bishop has had all of her powers bound by her parents when she was younger. Like all of her powers were like bound means, like for the audience that might not understand this, bound is when they're like stopping your powers, like so you can't
Like
live
in Frozen, they have her.
they're like
put the gloves
Frozen,
on.
yeah, like in Frozen, like in the movie
Yeah.
Frozen, right? Like
Yeah.
or like Elsa in Frozen. And so these powers are bound. And so she doesn't understand that she's this super, super powerful, magical being that is here to fight evil, right? And to help the world be a better place. And she's like throughout the story, she kind of this unravels. I don't want to give any spoiler alerts, but part of the story is she realizes eventually that she's something called a weaver. And a weaver is a type of witch that doesn't need a spell to work her magic. She just can do it, right? She is creating her own spells. And as a weaver, she sees all these threads all around her at all times. And so I realized in that book, and I messaged my friend, I'm like, am I a weaver? And she's like,
Yes.
yes, we are both weavers. And so that's when it started to make sense to me of why I wasn't like attracted to all of these different modalities, because I've learned how to tap into my own intuition. Like once I woke my gifts up, I can tap into my own intuition. I see all of these cords swirling around women, and I can help us make sense of all of those cords, right? So when I say intuitive, I never know what's actually going to come to the surface when I connect with a woman to work with her, right? I know I'm here to offer, like my shirt says today, Mary Magic. I'm here to offer magic. I'm here to offer medicine. I'm here to offer healing as the vessel, right? I'm not the healer. I'm just the vessel for the healing for that person to experience.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly until we start to connect and how we start to talk. I don't know what that's going to look like, right? And then once we connect, we start to see all of these chords, because we all have so many moving pieces of us. We're like, some people, it might be the next step in their healing journey is we need to focus in on their real physical health, right? They're not eating foods and getting the right nutrients that are going to elevate their body, right? They're not getting the right amount of rest. Sometimes I'm like, wait, you're dehydrated. You are like super dehydrated. And this is why you're getting, you're experiencing this or this or this, right? Sometimes it's because of, there's an emotional component, which I find with a lot of women. I always look at like, hey, we want to live in the space of alignment. That's our magical space. This is where the beauty happens. This is where the magic happens. This is where we like root down into our sacred space of being, is when we're in alignment. But alignment is, we have to look at the physical, we have to look at the emotional, we have to look at the energetics,
Everything.
we have to look at all of these chords and these strings coming into our life. And we can't just look at one or the other. And so many times as women, we're looking at this one thing in particular. And I find this a lot for like right now, I've just been in this like vibe for like women's hormones, where I've been like we're it's like all of these women are saying, hey, and maybe it's because of my age demographic, we're starting to hit that like 38 plus age demographic, and everybody's like, oh, my hormones are a mess. But actually, when I sit in conversation with women, their hormones are not even messed up. It's that we are not like anchored into good daily practices with food and nourishment and things like that. And we are completely ignoring the energetic side of hormones, which is probably 75% of where we're getting our disruption from, and feeling like shit because we hate our bodies. We hate our cycles. We don't know how to love our vagina. We've got all of this stuff going on. I know I just kind of like jumped all over the place, but this is an example because we're trying to create, like, we want to expand in our business, right? We want to expand in our relationships. We want to find the perfect guy. We want to find the perfect woman. We want to find the perfect partner. We want to have X amount of kids. We want to have this income level. We want to have great physical health. We want to lose weight. We have all of these desires, but we're like how we see to get from point A to B in our desires, like what we're seeing, we see like a little tiny piece of the thread, and that's what we dial in on and we focus in on, instead of looking at all of the threads that are coming into our lives, right? So I find with a lot, like with hormones, it's the energetic piece. With our business, it's because we're just not taking care of our physical bodies. And as women, we are over the top, burning ourselves out, trying to operate like a man. Right.
Yes.
And so it's learning. So when I say intuitive work, we're really just doing the work to put all of the pieces back together, right? To find all of these pieces that need to be addressed. And sometimes it could be like last week I was working with a woman, a beautiful soul, and I've done an energy work with her for several years. And the root of what's holding her back right now was a relationship from when she was 22 years old. Right? There was like, okay, where
Interesting.
did this like self-doubt come into place? It
Yep.
was from a breakup she had when she was 22, and she is now 62. Like, hello, right?
And
Like,
she never saw that.
never saw.
Never got the connection.
I was like, there is something going on. Like, it was either like in year 2022 or when you were 22 years old? Like, but I'm feeling it's when you were 22 years old. I was just getting this number of 22. I'm like,
Yeah.
what life event happened when you were 22? And she's like, oh my God, that was a long time ago. And I'm like, yeah, it was, but I need you to think back to something that pops up in your mind. She's like, oh my gosh, I broke off an engagement with somebody. She
Mm.
was 22 years old. Like, and
Okay.
from that moment, and so we cleared that, right? With energy, we can clear it because energy knows no time or space. So we
Hmm.
cleared these feelings. We did some work around it. And then I was like, wait, it's coming up again. It's coming up again. So we went back, and there was like times from like 16 years and younger that we were able to clear everything all at once, right? Because she was ready to do the work.
I love that.
And it was like so much beauty, so much magic, but we all carry around these things. And the reality is, the majority of us can't see these things on our own because they're so far deep buried in the subconscious. And our subconscious is what dictates 90% of our actions. So we're over here
Hmm.
like, whatever. And so we need that outside person to tell us, like, what do we do? So this intuitive work that I do, that's what it is. And Moon Mentor, because I also believe that most of women's healing happens when we understand how to work with our bodies, right? How to live in the space of how our bodies were created. And a lot of women, like, it doesn't matter what we have going on. The root of most women's like stuff is that we're operating too much in the masculine energy. We have too much control, and we
Hmm.
have too little self-worth, right? Because we're trying to define our lives and create success in the way our male counterparts have created it. Some people call it the patriarchy, whatever you want to call it. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just this thought that we're trying to do life like a male
Yes.
penis, and we have a vagina and we work completely differently. And so a lot of what we are trying to resolve in this intuitive work, the deeper the underlying, when we peel back the layers, it gets back to our self-worth. And
Yeah.
when we understand how to operate like a woman with the moon and everything, it all just falls into place. It's so fascinating. So
It
fascinating.
makes so much sense that
It
you
makes
never
so much
even knew
sense.
existed.
Yes, it like it makes sense. And one of the things I was somebody said last week to me, they're like, but you know that moon stuff you do and intuitive work, like that's just if you're hippy dippy woo woo. And I was like, no, 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 no. This is information that all women should have access to from the moment they're little girls. I mean, you have a little girl. I have three boys.
Hmm.
I'm still teaching my boys this, right? Because they need to understand it. I'm teaching my husband this shit because he's like, the other day I was like super, super, super cold. And he's like, why do you keep getting so cold? Like, and he was messing with me because we were at a ball game and it was snowing outside and it was really cold. And it was like the end of the fourth quarter of the basketball game. And I see him on his phone. I'm like, are you starting the car for my princess self? And he's like, yes, I'm starting the
Oh,
car to get it all warmed up. And I said, thank you so much. He's like, well, you've been so cold lately. And we get to the car and I was like, honey, did you actually realize that when a woman is having her cycle and it's wintertime, our basal body temperature is actually lower, making it a lot easier for us to get cold? And he's like, I had no idea. And I said, well, I am currently menstruating, which he knew. And I'm like, I am menstruating right now, and my body temperature is lower. Plus, it's winter and it's cold outside. And so I'm getting cold much more easily. So it's really important right now that I keep my body bundled up and my temperature warm as possible to simplify, like to help my body, to support my body
hmm.
in my menstruation right now. He's like, okay, whatever.
Oh, I was gonna say, was he open to receive that?
Yes, no, he's open to receive it. Like sometimes he's just like,
Like it's not
he's
connecting,
okay. So
maybe?
this is my husband, because I know a lot of women probably have this question. They're like, but my husband doesn't get it. They don't get it. They're probably not going
Yeah.
to get it. So there's a difference. They don't have to get it, but they have to support you in it. Right. So this
Yeah.
is my husband. Like, he does not necessarily understand my energy work and the work I do with women, but you know what? I don't understand it some days either. I just know that when I get in a space with a woman or I get in like an area, like I feel the things, I know the things, I ask the questions. I've got little, my guides in spirit in my ear being like, you need to ask this question. The questions don't make sense. Like when you do a session with me, the questions do not make sense. And then all of a sudden, they make perfect
It
sense.
does. Yeah,
They make perfect sense. And so
absolutely.
sometimes our significant others, our partners, whatever it is, they might not get what we do, but that doesn't mean they can't support us, right? And I
Absolutely.
think sometimes we get, as women, we sometimes get frustrated. This is part of this control thing, right? Like we want everybody to be like, oh, I'm on this new journey and I get it. Not everybody's going to get our journey. Like you and I were talking about that earlier. Not everybody's going to get it. And that's okay. They don't have to get it. They don't have to get
No,
it.
they don't.
Like
I
we
asked
need
someone
to,
the other day. Go
we
ahead,
can't
sorry.
work with the millions of people on this planet. We're not meant to work with millions.
Correct.
We're here to work with the people we're here to work with. And so, yeah, so he gets it, but then he's like, but it's not the full moon. Don't you usually like what's going on? Like it because
I
usually
love
I
that he's
do bleed.
asking questions.
Yeah, usually I do bleed with the full moon.
Okay.
And this is like I'm just a little ahead this time, but I will still be bleeding on the full moon. I'm like, well, it's just starting a little early. It's still gonna be with the full moon. It's like average time, sweetie. Average time. It's fine.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
love that
he's
he's
getting
asking
it
questions.
because
That's
we're
amazing.
teaching him. But what would happen? I want you to ask yourself. I mean, and you're doing this, you're living proof of this. When we teach our kids these things right here, right now,
It's the coolest
right?
thing ever.
It's
Like,
the coolest thing ever. It's
yeah.
so cool. And I think this might be a great segue to teach them like how I got to where I'm at, right? Because so 13 years ago, it was like, I don't know, it was a long time ago. 13 years ago, it seems like forever ago. Um, I was not hippy dippy woo crunchy moon mama, Mary Magic Katie, like not that
Hmm.
space at all. I was farm girl, grown up in Iowa, worked, went to college, got my degree, worked in corporate America, did all the things like you're supposed to do. And, there's no video.
Air
There's big
quotes.
giant air quotes over that supposed to do. And um, I had been diagnosed with PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, for those of you that don't know it. And I was really fortunate that the nurse practitioner I saw, she said, the best thing we're seeing for this, because this was back in the day, like I had been diagnosed with PCOS like 20 years ago, probably.
Okay.
And nobody knew what it was. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody like really. And this nurse practitioner, that's why I feel so thankful. She said the best thing we see for this is diet and exercise. And so that kind of like promoted me to start taking better care of myself. That like Marlboro Lights and Bush Lights didn't have to be my best friend, and fast
Yes.
food did not need to be my go-to. And so I had started kind of working toward that and had really self-regulated, but I was still, and she put me on a hormonal birth control, that kind of thing, because that's what you
Hmm.
do. That's what most practitioners still do. That's a whole nother discussion, not the best option, but another discussion. And but I started learning about my body a little bit, but she says, it's probably going to be a little bit challenging when you want to have kids. And it was.
Yeah.
And we had our first son,
Okay.
and then our second son, I did have a miscarriage, or I had a miscarriage, and then I had my second son, Nathaniel.
Okay.
And when I got pregnant with him, I didn't understand my body as much as I mean, again, I'm a 28-year-old woman that we're not given the tools. Like,
Exactly. It
we're not
takes so
given the
much time to
tools. You're
learn.
like, here, you have your period and they're like, here's some pads, here's some tampons, and go hide in shame in the bathroom trying to, pass tampons around. And,
Hmm.
like you should be like, nobody should know it's your period and you should just go on like normal, and so much shame around it.
There
And
is.
so I'm 28 years old, still have like lots of shame around it. And I had a miscarriage. There's a lot of shame that comes around pregnancy loss. Um, I started to, I told my grandmother, I remember telling my grandmother that I had had a miscarriage, and she's like, she starts telling me all these stories, like how she had had miscarriages, and my great grandmother had had a miscarriage, and never had known any of that until I had one. And then she started sharing the wisdom with me. Right. And I started being like, oh, okay. Well, then I, leaned into my faith, and I was, hey, this is all happening for a reason. What is the reason? Right.
Hmm.
But part of me, when I got pregnant right away again, was like, hey, do not use anything that is not natural, right? Like there's this little voice in my head. And that's when I stumbled upon essential oils. And I
Okay.
started using them in my home, started incorporating them into my house, started using them for the physical. Because of the PCOS, I did have another very successful pregnancy, but I was struggling with milk production. Couldn't quite keep up with all the milk production that my son required. He would not at all take a bottle. So I was his only option. So, and a friend introduced me to, this concept of learning how to take care of my body a little bit better. So it was
Okay.
essential oils with supplementation, things like that. And through that journey, that's when I actually started to wake myself up, when I started to wake up my gifts and my ability, because a lot of times people are like, hey, how do I tap into my intuition? And I say, well, you have to start with your physical, because most of us, if you're using, eating a lot of processed foods, you're taking a lot of over-the-counter medications, you're using a lot of toxins in your home, a lot of beauty products that are toxic. It's like clogging down our systems, and we can't listen to our intuition. We can't listen to her. We're like Elsa, and our gifts are bound, right? We're like Diana Bishop in the Discovery of Witches. And so we think there's like this magical pill and it's the physical. So I started learning how to heal my body, how to be a healer in my own home. And now fast forward, 12, 13 years, because of those choices, like, yeah, my gifts are woken up, but what I've been able to teach my kids when it comes to their health, right? When it comes to, like, I have teen athletes now that are really dialed into their nutrition, right?
I love that.
They're really dialed into like, oh, drinking electrolytes and knowing that we're not going to drink Gatorade because that's really not an electrolyte, right? They're really into, this morning, our discussion at the breakfast table was banning red dyes and why it's so important to ban red dyes.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What a great way to start the day.
Yeah, I know, because even
that.
though I like to do, I believe in balance, and I had bought them Captain Crunch cereal, like the Christmas Captain Crunch,
Yeah.
and my husband was like, "You bought that with all those red dyes?"
Yes, I did, honey. Yes, I did.
Yes, I did. And the kids were like happy as clams, but they know that that's not an everyday thing, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And I think that's really super important for them. And so anyway, but that's our discussion, because we shift. And I think so many times as women, we don't think, oh, well, I don't have time to learn about essential oils. I don't have time to learn about how to create my body with my moon. I don't have time to slow down when it's my period or it's the season of winter. I don't have time for all of these things. But we don't realize it's not just affecting when we make the decision not to grow, not to expand, not to step into more abundance in our lives. It's not just us that's being affected. It's like us, it's the people that surround us, it's our children, it's our children's children, it's the people we're here to serve. It's everybody. So whether it's the moon, or like healing the pieces of you that need to be healed, or learning how to embrace more natural concepts into your life, or learning how to make the changes, to stop drinking the alcohol every single night as your stress, your stress relief. I remember somebody like, Katie, we live in a small town. The only way we know how to deal with our emotions is at the local bar. And I'm like, yeah, that's how I grew up, but that's not how it has to be. And I think when you look back, and I know you're probably already seeing the changes in your daughter, but I think, like, as I have a 17-year-old, and like, by the time, like, it like blows my mind when I can look at these changes, these family patterns that we're shifting, that we're changing, that we're moving on. So I don't know, that kind of went all over the place, but
I loved it.
It's all the threads that come together, right?
Yeah, I love it. And I have so many questions.
Have you heard? Authentic Alignment, the Business Accelerator, is open for enrollment. In this small, tight-knit container of like-minded female entrepreneurs, you will gain the foundation and growth to start or scale your woman-owned business to one of wild abundance. With weekly calls, our specialized healing component, individualized support, and lifetime access, we have co-created a container like no other. Feeling the call? We are here and we are waiting for you. Need more one-on-one support? Rise Up, my 6-month life and business mentorship, is accepting applications. This is a container where impact meets income. Have questions? Head to my website, callitony.com/riseup.
In relation to that, with my daughter, when I was growing up, I was very anxious about who I was. I knew I was
Yeah.
a little bit different or whatever you want to say. I wasn't normal, quote unquote. Um, and it gave me a lot of anxiety because I'm so comfortable now with who I am.
Hmm.
She's also comfortable with who she is. So
Yes.
she will literally drop in the middle of a conversation and just start meditating. Or we'll pick up rocks off the uh ground and like connect with them in some way, shape, or form. It's
Hmm.
just how she is. And she's so comfortable with who she is because I'm now comfortable with who I am. And I'm so grateful that I get to pass that down to her so
Yeah.
she can grow up, hopefully, less anxious than I was and less uncomfortable with who she is and the fact that we're not, again, quote unquote, normal because we
Yeah.
have, and that's a question I wanted to ask because I was going to say we have these abilities. Do you believe that everybody is born intuitive?
I believe yes. It's just I believe that we all have access to our intuition. It's if we are, but it's going to be different for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Intuition is going to come in different forms for every single individual. And it also depends if we're willing to do the work to create to get into that space of intuition, right? Like I believe that all of the answers we seek that we're constantly looking outside of us for are all within us, right? Every
100%.
single answer we need, that gut feeling, right? It's all inside of us. But we've been so conditioned that all of our information needs to come from without, outside of us, that we don't know how to access that magic. And so the root of what I do, like what I really stand for is helping women get back to listening to that ancient wisdom, learning
I
how to
love that.
access that innate wisdom, that innate magic that's already inside of you, right? By learning how to live with the moon and your cycle and understanding your body, by learning how to clear these things that are getting in your way of getting that, by learning how to honor your body, right? How to put your body first every day, right? But that's not a process that a lot of women are willing to do, right? Like it's not a process that humans are willing to do because we
Mm-hmm.
want the easy button, we want the patterns, we want the frustration. It's like we're addicted. It's like we're addicted to being busy, we're addicted to saying yes, we're addicted to, the chemicals that we're eating and that we're using, and we're discrediting the role they play in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants the easy button. We
Instant
want the quick
gratification.
we want the instant gratification. We want the quick fix, right? Like I was saying before, we think the person that has the title or the degree is going to give us a different answer from the person that has years of experience and has helped thousands of people, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so it's really about, or we give up on ourselves like way too easily, right? We give
That's,
up on ourselves.
yeah.
Like we're just like, oh, I tried it and it didn't work. And I'm like, but did we really try it? Right? Because true change requires that we look in the mirror, and that's not easy to do.
Yes. That's
And so
what I
I
was going to
believe that we
say.
all have it. Whether we will access it in this lifetime, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the other
I,
question. For a lot of people, the answer is no. But I don't know. We're shifting into this new world of Aquarius, and there's going to be a lot of changes coming in 2025 where it's like the feminine rise of power, like these old ideals and ideology is like out, right? It's like out. This like thought process of, you know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's out in 2024.
I
Like
love it.
it's like, and we've got a big old full moon. I don't know when people are going to listen to this, but December 15th, there's a huge full moon. Whether you're looking, whether you're probably going to be looking back on this for this podcast interview, I want you to ask yourself what happened around the mid December? What did I really release and let go of that I didn't need?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes when we look back, we can see it just as much as when we look forward. Right? So it's just this, I don't know, like there's lots of changes happening. There's a disrupting, this rumbling. Whether we all access it in this lifetime, probably not, but it's there. It's there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
there. It's there for us
I,
to claim.
and we talked about this a little bit before we hopped on, but I am actually going to post this tomorrow.
Okay.
So it will be out for the full moon. So I do want to ask a question about the full moon. But before I do that,
we talked about this a little bit earlier, and like growth and kind of, in my opinion, and from my experience working with people and just talking to people, that growth and change is so scary.
So scary. It's
And they don't want to
unfamiliar.
do it because it's so scary to them. And I know it's scary. I've done it and I'm doing it every day. I'm not saying I'm
Yeah.
healed by any means, but I'm doing the work to grow every day and to change every day and be a better me every day. And I know how scary it is. And I just wish I could bottle up some of the bravery that the people that are really avidly trying to grow and change and just gift it like to
Yeah.
the world, because I see how scared people are and I just want to tell them it's so beautiful on the other side.
Yeah.
So that was just my thought with that.
Yeah. I love that because it's scary and it's uncomfortable. And I think this is why it's, they say you are only as strong as the five people you spend the most time with, right? And I get the excuse from a lot of women, but I live in this area. I'm stuck with these friends, right? I live in a small town. I totally get it, right? Who you spend your time with or who you expose yourself doesn't have to mean like your coworkers that you're spending the most
Mhm.
time with, right? Because those are that. It can be, here's some examples to create the change, right? And I'm going to give a couple that are paid and a couple that are unpaid. And we get to decide, right? Which ones we do. Listening to a podcast, right? So instead of like a couple of really easy shifts, instead of listening to the news or scrolling on Facebook, right? Listen to podcasts that inspire you, that
Mhm.
allow you, like that is surrounding yourself with somebody that gets you, right? If you
Yes.
have physical fitness as your goal, right? I know for me, physical fitness was like a hard one for me. I didn't grow up in a family that worked out. I mean, we were farmers, so we were just like, that was just natural part of it. So, like, working out was something that was a new concept to me. And it's still like, I know who I am. I will not push myself in a workout if I'm by myself,
Yeah.
right? But if I go to the gym and I do a small but I don't like working out with people individually. I think it's really weird to have a personal trainer. Like I've tried that route too, but it's like it took a little trial and error, right?
Yeah.
But I know that if I'm in a small group and I have to register for a class that I can't cancel at the last minute, I will get myself to the gym. And I will push myself harder than I would ever push myself on my own when I'm in that group. And when I get there, I always feel better about my physical and I meet, like, I just walking into the gym, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm around people that are wanting to be health minded, right? It's
Yes.
being, you and I were just talking about this. It's like we're both part of some different masterminds. It's being part of a mastermind. Some masterminds are paid, some masterminds are not. I think this is why it's so important sometimes to work with a coach. The coach probably again isn't going to teach you anything that you don't already know, but they're going to give you permission to have the confidence to move forward with the tools you already have, right? To
Mhm.
keep you like, I know for me, those are really, really important.
Yeah. Me too.
It's that accountability that like, but I think it's just, because the growth is scary.
It's
And a
so
lot of the
scary.
growth requires you have to look in the mirror and you have to break patterns that you've had for generations. I mean, shame happened in the Garden of Eden for women. Like,
Mhm.
shame and self-doubt. That's a long time ago that we're just still carrying it with us.
I think that's a common misconception that people think it's just your generation that you have to break the pattern with, and it's not. It's like how
It's
many
gener-
billions of years?
it's generations. It's
Yes.
generations. It's generations of women not being taught that their period is sacred. It's,
Hmm.
generations of all of these things. And so I think that, it's just, you have to have a tribe to do it. And I think the biggest piece is we we get knocked down and we stay down because we didn't surround ourselves with people, the right tools and the right resources. And again,
Yeah.
some of those things can be paid, some of those things can be not paid. But it's like, what is the price of not creating the change? right?
I
What
love
is the
that.
price? Like I work a lot, just because of the essential oils and the working with doTERRA, I have worked with thousands of people in that realm with their health. What is the cost of you not making the changes to lose the weight or get your metabolic health on track, or to what is the cost? It is you not living life to the fullest, right? It is you like being 80 years old and can't moving. It is you not being able to be present for your kids. It's you not having the energy to chase your dreams. It is thousands of dollars of medical expenses.
Much more expensive
Thousands in
in many
a
ways.
country that's like millions and billions of dollars in debt for medical things. Because we weren't willing to make the change, we hit the easy button. We're still hitting
Hmm.
the easy button in so many areas of our life. So I encourage them, like, find a tribe. They're out there. And they
So
don't have to
many.
be your neighbor next door. Mine aren't. I mean, I love the women in my town. Some of them might listen to this. I don't know. I love them, but my tribe is, I've got other women in my tribe.
Yeah, everywhere. That's what mine is. It's all over. I love the people that I surround myself with in my current life, like physically in person, but I love my online community so much.
Yeah.
And again, some of it is paid, some of it's free. Like I lean into all that kind
Yep.
of support
Yep.
and I embrace it fully because community to me is everything.
Community is everything. And we've isolated ourselves because of whatever reason. The other thing I think I also need to say, and I think that you can probably relate to this, just because you're an entrepreneur, you're a mom, you've done all the things to create the change. I've coached thousands of women and men, some men too. The really, like, I would say community is number one. The second thing is like you have to realize that most of the things that are going to give you the greatest amount of change are so simple and so small and so minute and so easy to do that we
Mhm.
discredit them and they're easy not to do, right? So it like an example would be like it's really easy not to go for the 20-minute walk after dinner, right? It's really easy to say I don't want to go for the walk. But going for a 20-minute walk after dinner and the benefits it has to your blood sugar levels to then help you sleep at night is profound, right? And that 20-minute walk is probably going to help you get in 2,000 more steps, right?
Yes.
But we say yes to a social media scroll for an hour instead of a 20-minute walk after dinner, right?
When you can scroll on your walk.
You can totally scroll on your walk, right? Don't recommend that. It's a disconnect time. Disconnect.
Okay, okay,
Wind down
okay.
for bed, okay? No,
Yes.
just kidding. You can do whatever you want on your walk. Listen to a book, listen to that podcast. It's going to
Yeah.
inspire you, right? Different things like that. Like it's if you're a business owner, it's really, and I've caught myself in this, it's really easy not to post on social media every day. It's really easy
Yeah.
to create an excuse, but it's also really not that hard to just throw something out there,
Nope.
right? It's really easy to reach out to a couple of contacts every day to be like, hey, how are you? But it's also easy not to do that.
And I think a lot of it, the reason we don't, again, comes back to fear. Like
Mm-hmm.
the hit that I got, as you said, reaching out to people. With me working with clients, I'm very big on that, where I ask them to reach out every so often to people just to connect. And they get so scared of that connection because they feel as though like they're inconveniencing the potential client or the friend or whatever it is or the client, and they kind of like retreat from doing that, but it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
But it's once you do it more, it's like exercising a muscle. It gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and
Yeah,
you get better at it and it gets easier.
it is. It gets, yeah, it's like habit. Like, I mean, James Clear, we're getting ready to go into a new year where people are like, you know, they're ready to create the change,
Hmm.
right? We're ready to create the change, but it's like, don't go so big on your changes
I was
either.
just gonna say that.
Like create it's the small there's like so much beauty and profound things that happen when we focus in on the small things,
Yes.
right? The little things.
Yes. My journaling practice has, I have a very specific journaling practice that I do. I have a very free flowing journaling practice that I do, but I do this every single day. I write intentions, affirmations, and gratitudes.
Mhm.
And it takes me about 5 to 10 minutes. It's so short, but it's like you said, it's so easy not to do it. But then when I don't do it, I feel like my day is just not
Yeah.
as abundant as it could be. Um, it just feels off in some way. So I do it, but it started very small. It started with gratitude. So I'd write one thing I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And then I'd write two, and then it turned into five. And then I got into the intentions, and then I got into the affirmations.
Yeah.
And it grew into something I love, and that is just a daily habit for me. But I didn't start out with this huge, long self-care 2 hour thing that
No.
I now do
Yeah.
throughout the day. It all started small and developed into what works for me.
Right. Yeah. And we have to, and that's the thing. Like, I'm like, hey, here's what I've tried. Like, this is kind of a rant, but I'm over the like, follow my exact formula to create success.
I know.
There's no
Me
exact
too.
formula. We
No.
all have to do what works for us. And so I'm here to give you some tips. I'm here to give you some ideas, but I want you to figure out what works for your body. And like when I'm teaching women to work with the moon, I'm like, look, here's some basic guidelines of what happens during a full moon and new moon, your ovulation. Here's some guidelines. You have to pay attention to your body to figure out how your body responds,
Mhm.
because your body might respond different than my body, right? It probably will, because we're all
I was
unique
gonna
and
say.
individual. Like your
Yep.
journaling practice, and here's the thing, like sometimes my morning practice, because I'm a mama, I've got 3 kids, I'm busy, and I get it. Like the majority of women listening to this, we've got a lot of stuff we got going on, right? Sometimes right
Mhm.
now in the season that we're in, it is a 5 minute silence with my cup of coffee to write down a couple of things that I want to make sure I get done for the day. And then again in the evening after everybody goes to sleep, I sit with my cup of tea and look at the Christmas lights. Right? Like
Perfect.
that's it. 5 minutes. 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night. And then the rest of the
Yeah.
day I'm like, go, go, go. Like I got stuff to do.
It can be small. It's absolutely perfect to just be exactly what
Yeah.
you want it to be, and feel called for it to be.
Yeah.
So, on the full moon topic, could you, because this will be released on the 13th of December, and you said the full
Okay.
moon is the 15th of December,
Correct.
correct? It's a Sunday. Um, do you have maybe like a takeaway that you wouldn't mind sharing, something that the listeners could potentially do this Sunday for the full
Absolutely.
moon?
Okay. So a full moon is all about there's 4 different phases of the moon, just like there's 4 different phases in a woman's cycle. I mean, there's more than that, but there's 4 main phases, right? 4 main
Mhm.
phases of the moon, 4 main phases of a woman's cycle, 4 main phases of or seasons of the year, right? All of those different phases align and have similar energies. Okay. And so a full moon is when the moon is very bright in the sky, right? We're seeing the full, big, giant expression of the moon. And that is also the same type of energy as when a woman is ovulating, right? And when we ovulate, we just feel really good. We're kind of out there. We've got this big expression we've got going on. And so this full moon's the same way. Like in nature, it's when all of the animals are out to play at night because they can see everything. It's like
Yes.
their full expression. They're like, yay, we're going to play. I want us to think about 200 years ago before we had electricity. When there was a full moon, we were probably able to be outside, gathering in the forest, maybe hunting at night, things like that, a little bit later or longer because there was this beautiful, beautiful full moon in the sky, right? So, full moons are doing 2 things. They are illuminating our gifts, right? They're illuminating our gifts and all the pieces of us. But full moons are not just illuminating our gifts, they're illuminating our shadows too, and the things that we shouldn't hold on to, right? And the reason, so a full moon is so this full moon is here to illuminate all of our beautiful gifts, right? It's almost like it's bubbling everything to the surface. And because it's bubbling everything to the surface for us to use our gifts, it's like those beliefs, those thoughts that are holding us back, those old outdated programs and patterns that need to go. It's a really great time to release all of them. So what we say about a full moon is that it's time to step into our authentic self and let go of all the shit that we don't need. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this is the last full moon of 2024. So this is also about letting go of the things in 2024 that we do not need to carry into 2025. Okay. So I want you to start to really think about like, and it doesn't always have to be like the untangible, like the thought patterns, the programming, things like that. It could be things. So I've had a lot of people telling me we're in like this deep purge right now. I just want to get rid of all the things, right? Like there's too much clutter in my house. I just want to get rid of all this stuff. So it can be like physical things we're getting rid of. It could be toxic relationships that we need to let go of. It could be like and one of the things I tell women is that start to notice where you feel frustrated. And that's a really good sign. That's kind of like the cookie crumbs to try to follow of what I need to let go of. Because some people will be like, I don't know what I need to let go of, right? And so start to follow, like, where are you feeling frustrated in your life? What is feeling heavy to you? What feels like it might not be working right now? This could be life. This could be business. It's all like woven together, right? It's not separate. And so just start to ask yourself. And one of the other things I always say, so understanding that this full moon is for releasing, also understanding that you really have 48 to 72 hours before the full expression of the full moon and 24 to 48 hours after the full moon, you're still got that energy to work with. So from the moment this podcast comes out on the 13th until probably honestly, like the 21st, when we hit winter solstice, you've got like a good 5 to 7 days in that time period to really start to release. So some people are like, oh, I didn't catch the full moon on Sunday night. Doesn't matter, right? And so one of the things I invite you to do is just take some time to yourself. Enjoy that sacred pause, which is one of the hardest things for women to do, is to pause for a good full moon ritual. Because often what you need to release isn't going to come to the surface when you're just like, running your kids around to practices and doing the dishes in the kitchen, right? Like you need to set the intention. And a lot of times, like just write out on the top of a journal, like, where am I frustrated? What do I need to let go of? And just sit and ask yourself that question on repeat and like just start to write about it and start to see the things that come up, right? You also might want to take a bath is a great thing to do for the releasing. Anything you write out on the piece of paper, burn it. Whether you have a little fire pit where you're at, it's too cold for that right now for me. I mean, I have a little one out on my deck I might do. But you can do that kind of releasing. There's just some other things that you can do. Just burn it and put it in the toilet. Like, I don't care what you do. Just there's sacred magic that happens when you write something out and then you do the physical act of burning it. So go for a walk in nature, those kinds of things. Lots of different things that you can do.
I love that. Thank you so much for those tips. It's totally it's very related, but just kind of like a clarifying question. I hear a lot about salt baths. Do you suggest that for the full moon, or is
Absolutely.
that not totally necessary?
I suggest detox fasts 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
So if you really want to here's a really yummy recipe. If you really want to like help purge your body out, is you can do Epsom salts. Do not get scented because most of the scents they have in them are going to be very toxic going back into your body. So make sure you get the unscented Epsom salts. Very important. If you want to take like a really good detoxing cleansing bath, I would do at least 1 cup to 2 cups of Epsom salts, a half a cup at least of baking soda, just plain old baking soda. And then you can also put a little bit of apple cider vinegar into the bath as well. I know that sounds a little strange. And then of course I use essential oils. So just don't use off brands because they'll burn your ass. That's not going to be fun. So,
Yeah, no.
but that's a yummy way to make like a nice little detox bath. You can put some rose petals in there, whatever you wanted, but that is also a very great way to help you purge and detox out the stuff that no longer serves you, that
I
physical
love it.
piece.
I love it so much. Um, so I could keep chatting with you all day.
I know,
Um,
so much fun.
but I think you have sourdough to get to, and I
I
have
do
to
have
get,
some sourdough to get to because I'm a sourdough crazy lady.
yeah, and I have to get Annalise from school after a bit. So maybe we could do like a part two on this because I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
If you were open to it, maybe it doesn't have to be as long, but I have a bunch of questions still that I would love to ask.
Okay.
Um, but I want to know how people can find you
Okay.
online and like if there's anything you're offering right now that you want to talk about or that's coming or just like
Yep.
teasers you want to give, I want to hear it.
Okay, so the best place to find me is probably on Instagram, although I'm kind of going back and forth between two profiles right now. So either Katie Glasgow or Magic with Katie on Instagram. I post in both places. So that's a great place to connect. I also have, and I will send Kelly the link for this. I am hosting a full moon solstice retreat next week. So it is absolutely free. It's 1 hour long. It's going to be a sacred pause for women. And I'm going to teach you really how to embrace the season of winter, which is when we pause, when we reflect, when we slow down. And this seems to be the most challenging thing for women is to learn how to slow down. And so that is what we are going to do on that call. And so I will send that link. And those are two great ways to get started. I have a couple more things coming in the new year, but as long as you get connected, through that workshop or on Instagram, you'll be able to follow along with all the juicy stuff.
Awesome. And I will share in the show notes your links for all of those things.
Okay, perfect.
And what the takeaways are and everything. So this was super awesome.
Yeah, so much fun.
Thank you for joining me today. I'm definitely saving my questions because even if we don't do a part two, which I'd love to do a part two if you're open to it, but if we don't do a part two, I'm gonna I'm gonna pick your brain about these other questions I
Okay,
have
okay, sounds good.
because they're super this was super interesting for me. But awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You are welcome.
I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Alignment Blueprint. We will see you next time.
All right. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Alignment Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed and got at least one takeaway. Liking what you hear? Subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you listen from. And don't forget to join me over on Instagram at CallieTony_. That's at CALLITONY_. Talk soon.